One of the subpoenaed witnesses, witness 55, began to testify, but claimed that he was under a great deal of stress and feared for his safety, and that he was therefore unable to complete his testimony. After consultation with the victims and witness section of the tribunal and medical examination, the Chamber concluded that it would not be in the interests of justice to continue hearing witness 55's testimony. On several occasions, in order to determine the presence of a person at a given time and place, the Chamber had to rely on the identification evidence of a single eyewitness. The Chamber considered several factors when evaluating such evidence, such as identification by a witness who only had a fleeting glance or an obstructed view of a person, sighting occurring in the dark, sighting during a traumatic event experienced by a witness, and the possibility of a witness's delayed assertion of memory of the presence of a person. The Chamber will now give a summary of its findings, starting with the general elements of war crimes and crimes against humanity. With regard to the general elements of war crimes, the Chamber received a great deal of evidence relevant to the existence of an armed conflict in Kosovo between the KLA and Serbian forces. The clashes at the Ahmeti, Yashari and Haradinaj family compounds between late February and late March 1998 were particularly violent, yet isolated events, followed by periods of relative calm. The evidence shows that the conflict reached the requisite level of intensity on the 22nd of April 1998, when frequent shelling was taking place in the Chani municipality. Civilians were fleeing from the countryside. The KLA was clashing with Serbian forces, and the Yugoslav army was participating in combat and, on a large scale, deploying on the ground. By the 22nd of April 1998, the KLA qualified as an organized armed group capable of entering into armed conflict with the Serbian forces. It had recruited many members or volunteers, provided training, and developed a rudimentary military structure. It controlled a considerable amount of territory, ran supply routes for obtaining weapons and other equipment, used guerrilla tactics, and issued communiques in its name. On the basis of the evidence before it, the Chamber found that an armed conflict existed in Kosovo from and including the 22nd of April 1998 onwards. That is to say, before the material facts charged in each count of the indictment, with the exception of counts 3 and 4. With regards to the general elements of crimes against humanity, the prosecution alleges that there was a widespread or systematic attack by the KLA directed against part of the civilian population in the Dečani, Peć, Dakovica, Istok, and Klina municipalities of Kosovo. That part consisted of the Serb civilian population in these municipalities, as well as civilians perceived to be collaborating with the Serbs or otherwise not supporting the KLA. The prosecution's case with respect to the alleged attack was to a large extent based on the evidence adduced under individual counts. This evidence did not always allow the Chamber to conclude whether a crime was committed or whether the KLA was involved as alleged. The evidence on some of the other counts indicated that the victims may have been targeted primarily for reasons pertaining to them individually rather than as members as a civilian population under attack. These counts were not taken into consideration when determining whether there was an attack against a civilian population. In addition to the evidence on individual counts in the indictment, the Chamber heard some evidence relating to whether there was an attack against a civilian population. Much of this evidence concerned Serbs leaving their homes during the indictment period. The Chamber is convinced that many Serbs left their homes out of fear of being deliberately attacked by the KLA, or out of a general fear of being caught up in the developing armed conflicts, rather than because they were being directly targeted by the KLA. Indeed, Kosovar Albanians also fled from their homes during the indictment period. The Chamber could not, therefore, draw any general conclusions with regard to the alleged attack against the civilian population from the mere fact that many Serb civilians left their homes during this period. As for assaults against non-Albanians during the indictment period, the evidence was often insufficiently precise to conclude who was or were responsible for those assaults and whether they formed part of a larger attack against a civilian population. The Chamber found that the ill treatment, forcible transfer, and killing of Serb and Roma civilians, as well as Kosovar Albanian civilians perceived to be collaborators or to be unsupportive of the KLA, were not on a scale or of a frequency that would allow for a conclusion that there was an attack against the civilian population.